And anyone who's listening, I just can say, even if I haven't seen them or met them personally, like I know for a fact that you have a purpose and that it's already inside of you and that it's just waiting to be discovered.
We are delighted to sit down today with Mike and Erin Allen, dear friends of ours from long, long ago. And welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. I am Eric Orton.
I'm Emily Orton.
Here we talk about personal growth, family connection, and raising adult kids so that you can thrive as a person, partner, and parent, and make your midlife more meaningful. Did I get that right, Emily?
That was a lot of alliterative things.
Boom, 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 boom. Hey, it's Eric. If you want to go sailing with us this year, here's how that works. First of all, we just got back from the Bahamas last week, had a blast. We have a few more trips planned for this year. There's two ways that you can come sailing with us. One is you can book by the cabin, and two, you can just get a group of 6 to 10 people together. Let me know. We'll check our calendars, find a time that works, pick a place that you're excited about that I want to go to, and we'll make it happen. So reach out and let me know if you want to get a group together. If you want to book by the cabin, here's what you do. Go to theawesomefactory.nyc/sailing2024 and you can get the rundown on what's happening, how it all works. And at the bottom, you can schedule a time to chat with me. I'll answer all your other questions and see if we can find a trip that's a match for you. So if you want to get out on the water, go sailing somewhere fun this year, would love to join you there. Thanks so much. And now you're going to read a little bit about our wonderful guests today.
Yeah, we just got so lucky that our paths have crisscrossed over and over again. And I think we're kind of weaving our lives together. But let me tell you about them. Erin was born and raised in McGrath, Alberta, which just sounds magical, Canada, and spent her childhood running around barefoot with her cousins. She's a former middle and high school teacher turned yoga instructor and co-founder of The Light Within Us with her husband, Michael. Are you the only one who calls him Michael? Okay, moving on.
We're going to call you Mike tonight, if that's okay. All right.
Mike's good.
Long distance running fills her up, as does reading multiple books at the same time. After living in New York City and the Bay Area, she and her family moved back to Utah during the pandemic. She considers her role as a mother of 5 children the most sacred, rewarding, and challenging work she's ever done, alongside her best friend and husband. Same person. Michael was born in Arizona and grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is where we're recording this podcast. He served a full-time mission for 2 years in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Did I say it correctly? Yeah. Okay. And then returned to BYU to graduate with a BFA in graphic design. He's had the opportunity to work in Salt Lake City, New York City, the Bay Area at great companies, including DoorDash, Profit. I went to your office there. I think Johnson & Johnson, Struck, and Pentagram, New York. In 2021, Mike left the corporate world and co-founded The Light Within Us and his wife, Erin, consisting of retreats, classes, and intentional gatherings, and later became a co-founder of the Here Brotherhood, whose mission is to forge a global brotherhood of support and growth. He's the grateful father of 5 children and blessed husband of Erin. And that gives us a lot to dig into because that is exactly what we want to talk about. I remember Eric and I were traveling with 4 of our 5 kids. We were in Salerno, Italy. We were on a dock, and I called you on the phone, Erin. And I remember you said to me, not the exact quote, but the idea was, we figured out what our purpose in life is. We know what it is now. And I just felt like electricity run through my body. And I felt so happy for you to feel like you had such a clear path to get started on. And that's the journey that I would love to hear more about, what the purpose is, how you got started, like what kind of obstacles popped up, what you've been learning along the way. We'll come in and ask questions as we go. But for me, that's where I would love to start, was just that search for your purpose, and then I guess the finding it.
Emily, I remember that conversation. I remember exactly where I was sitting. I remember crying with you as we talked about such sacred things. That discovery was made after a lot of hard and a lot of challenge. I'll let Mike maybe get into more of the details around like his perspective, his experience with that. But long story short, things were just not going well. With his job, it was feeling very heavy. It was feeling maybe like, am I even on the right path? I was homeschooling at the time with the kids and trying to support, and my own, personal experience during that time, I wasn't feeling as lost, but I was definitely concerned with just like how much of a struggle it had been. Mike, do you want to tell the story from your perspective, like the meeting that kind of launched everything?
Well, yeah, I'll say I've had like an amazing career professionally, right? I feel like really fortunate on the things that I've been able to do. And there was a time at I won't get too much in the details. There was a time at a particular company where I was just like really struggling, like kind of felt like I lost my way or something. It was a very dynamic, different environment than what I was used to. I had been through there was just a lot of change. And so I had a couple different bosses in quick succession. And I was just not jiving well with the team or the situation I was in, and felt, very disoriented. I felt very lost. I felt a lot of like self-doubt. Like, am I even good at what I do suddenly, after like more than a decade of experience and like, doing good work and whatever. I was just like really in this funky self-doubt stage.
And I remember being in your home in the Bay Area.
Oh, yeah.
As well, part of this, because we were just coming out of Yosemite and we were hanging out.
Yes.
You were telling me
that was
about
that
this.
exact timing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm with you.
So it was a bit of a struggle, and it kind of was taking a toll on my confidence, on my like sense of direction, on my vision for the future. I had I had selected a career in design, and I just thought like, I love design, and I'm like, I'm just going to do this forever. Like that was just kind of the expectation. And when we talk about figuring out our purpose, I feel like we've lived fairly intentional lives throughout our married life together, but seldom did we actually like take the time to sit down and get really clear about it. It was just sort of family centered and career driven. Like where we lived was based on career. A lot of decisions we made was based on what we just felt was best for the family. And so all that was in place, but it wasn't something we often said like, what do we want really?
Yeah. We hadn't even considered.
It was just like, that's just, I hadn't even thought about that was just kind of it. Right. And I think those were good things. It just, it didn't feel as deliberate, as clear, as intentional. So that's a little backdrop for, we suddenly hit this turbulence, right? With this idea of what my path is. And suddenly it looks really fuzzy. Like the future looks blurrier than it ever had before during this stage. And I was just, mentally kind of struggling and feeling a lot of doubt. And I went into a meeting one day that was just like the worst meeting of my career. Like I went in, it was sort of a impromptu, like, what do they call that? Performance review. It was sort of
quarterly review, but impromptu.
It was
the unscheduled performance review, which is usually never good news.
It was the kind of thing where like, they were supposed to have happened a while ago, and I think I was out of town or something, so it got missed. And then like later, it came up, and it was like, well, let's just do it right now. And so we went in, and it was just like a terrible meeting for me. I literally had the like fight or flight response while we were going through everything. Like I just. And my response was flight, but I couldn't leave the room. So I was just trapped there and just kind of like, my brain wasn't working clearly. I feel like I couldn't defend myself well. I mean, it was a bad situation. So I have that. I go out of that meeting just feeling like terrible. I get home.
I still remember your countenance, like just crestfallen, heavy. You walked through the door, just...
Yeah.
We put the kids to bed, it got settled, and you sat down and you said, Erin, we need to have a conversation. I actually don't know if I'm going to have a job on Monday. And that's the start of the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, that hadn't been said in the review, but I was like, if this is how things feel like they're going, like it's not going anywhere good. I was like, this might be over. And what does that mean for us and for our family? And so I just like laid out all of my fears, concerns. I probably was over exaggerating it, just based on how I was feeling, because I didn't get fired like when I went back the next week.
But you didn't know that.
Exactly.
I mean, you're trying to read the tea leaves and
exactly.
Yeah.
But it felt like it was headed that direction. So I remember just laying out all my fears and worries and frustrations and just kind of dumping it all. And Erin, just like a pro, was just holding space for me and just letting me talk, and like wasn't getting caught up in all of the worries and stuff that I was feeling. She was just kind of like respecting that that's where I was at, but she was holding her space. And I got through all of it. And then finally, Erin's like, Mike, can I say something now?
Good listening, Erin. Way to go. No.
And
well, I really want to be honest here. Like, the Lord gets the credit for that. I'm an excellent warrior, and like my typical response would be to be very caught up and very concerned. But honestly, I just felt so peaceful and I felt excited. I remember just like, I'm listening, and suddenly I started getting this big smile on my face, and you were like,
Mike's
what
like,
are you
why
doing?
Are you smiling at my worst moment?
It was really, I was so genuinely happy because I could feel the Spirit telling me, this is so good. This is so good. And I remember telling you, I was like, I honestly am so grateful that things went the way they did today, because I think this is going to be the thing that's going to push you to discover what you're really meant to do on this earth. And we started delving in. We started writing. We started discovering. And it was unlike anything we'd ever done before. I don't know that we would ever do that if we were in our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And through that experience, I've learned that like when things fall apart, when the rug rips out from under you, that's actually
an opportunity,
an amazing opportunity. There's always goodness on the other side of that. Anyway,
if you choose it like Erin did.
Well, I don't know. I just feel like when we get pushed out of the comfort zone is because there's more like opportunity. There's more. We're meant to grow. We're meant to expand. And I feel like comfort zones keep you kind of small, Anyway, so we started writing.
Yeah.
I remember we just both got out blank papers and sat at our counter, right?
And I think the first prompt was, what is most important to you?
Yeah.
Like, what are the most important things? And we just started writing.
The two of us
so we wrote for ourselves, right? Like, okay, I'll write my answers, you write your answers, and then let's compare.
Okay.
And look at these are the same, right? Like top 2 or 3 were the same.
Yeah.
And then, there's some differences, and it's like, okay, cool. I can like support you with that, and you can support me with this, and, let's just figure it out. But I just have to like reemphasize how significant it was, like the headspace I was in and the way that I was feeling that night. It just completely flipped on its head. And instead of, I was imagining this, like, this is going to be a crappy weekend where I'm going to be like looking for jobs or something online and like calling people, talking to my friends, like, hey, how you guys hiring over there?
Right.
And instead it was just this kind of these blue sky questions, right? Mm-hmm. Instead, it was this very creative and exciting discovery process and just getting clear, let's get clarity on all the things. Cause I think we had just slipped into, there was this comfort zone, and there was habit, and there was sort of like, this is just our lives, and we're just doing it every day, like we got our routine. And then this event at my workplace just shook it up enough that it allowed us to take a step back and reevaluate our entire lives. It was like, let's just pretend that we don't have all these constraints. Like, what would we choose? What would we do? You guys asked the question of like, if money were no object, like what would you do? And then you figure it out later, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure we were like feeling some of that influence because we had many conversations prior to the Navigators framework and, things that you guys have established now. So I'm sure
your influence has been
that was
felt
like
for
in there.
I'm so grateful.
So
that goodness has been planted a long time ago, and so grateful for that. But I remember our blank papers. Do you remember we compared them, and we had the exact same word at the top of our list, which was family. And not just our family, but like families.
That family is most important to you.
Yep. Yeah. Families of the world. Like, and a deep desire to strengthen families. And I mean, I don't know how in depth we want to go. There's a lot to talk about, but maybe just long story short, over the course of the weekend, it just felt there were uploads, just like all of a sudden we could visualize things we'd never visualized before. We're like, oh my goodness, what if we did this? What if we did this? And one of the things that was so beautiful, that was such a breakthrough, was all of the education, all of the experience that Mike had in his branding career, which he was like, am I even on the right path? Is this even fulfilling? Is this meaningful in like any sort of like eternal sense? The Lord helped us to see, oh my goodness, if you shift that towards the family and helping families get really clear on their core values, on their guiding principles, on their purpose, like how powerful, how strengthening. It's like he'd been prepared all along. And I just love that moment, that like aha moment where I feel like we just like cried. We were just like, oh my goodness, all along. Like we have been prepared all along. We didn't even know it, but like, here it is. And here's what you're meant to do. And then again, just like it could expand into this, it could get expanded into that. But like that weekend is when we started to like create our own, we call it the Crest and Purpose Guide. And it's a branding exercise, but it's for families, it's for individuals. And we did it for our family. And that was such an amazing experience to get really clear, like, what is our family all about? What are our core values?
Can I jump in here?
Oh, yeah.
Because I know you were remembering the conversation that you two had, Emily and Erin, about, hey, we've kind of discovered it. And then I remember, you were taking all of your branding, I don't want to say branding exercises, but kind of like the process that you'd go through with a company. And you said, we're going to turn it and we're going to shine it on a family and let a family go through this experience. And I remember we were visiting my parents at the time, and we had our kids with us, and we sat out on my parents' back deck, and we went through this I remember where we were when we went through this exercise, and we still have our crest.
Nice.
It's, where we can see it in our home. And so why don't you guys talk a little bit about that process, and then I want to discuss about where it's kind of gone from there.
I just want to say one thing. Two things probably. First of all, I just love the story about all the blessings that were in the blurry times. Like that
blessings and blurry.
Yes,
that's good.
that led you to dig for something deeper. And that really turned the soil, which I love, that you guys approached it that way, that you were willing to be humble and brave enough to adjust your perspective on the situation. And like you said, you had help from the Lord in that. I also really loved how earlier, Erin, you said that Mike's countenance was crestfallen. And at the end of the experience, you came away saying like, we are going to like lift up these crests for families, right? Like we're going to like, I don't know the opposite of crest fallen, crest raised.
Crest lifted.
Crest lifted. But it really is just trying to help people get super clear on, I think even having values before you start setting goals is, the more important thing. And I love that we have ours, and we've come back to it again and again. It has many parts, right? There are images that go with it, and then there are phrases that go with it. And there's a motto, basically, which I guess would be in business, it would be like your one-liner.
Your mission,
and that
purpose.
And that
purpose
is
statement.
short enough that I can always remember without review. And ours is, as children of our Heavenly Father, as children of God, we seek the best for ourselves and others.
Nice.
Like it's just a pursuit of excellence mentality, right? A
for
mode of
everyone,
operating for everyone. Yeah.
Love it.
And it took us a while to get to that.
It took us a long time. We were
to distill all of these things that you're all about down into one phrase. It is work. But there's power in those words, right? And the meaning behind them. That's one of our guiding principles of our thing is thoughts and words have power to create. And the crest and the purpose statement is a manifestation of that concept, right? It's like we put the thought and the words here, and it's now creating so many aspects of our lives. Because I love that you brought up the distinction between like a purpose or an intention and a goal, because I think that the purpose and the intention precedes the goal, right? And even the significance of the goal. And I love that. Personally, I'm not really great at setting goals and having like a checklist of all the things that I'm going to do, but I do feel like knowing what my intention is and what my purpose is drives me to do those things anyway, whether or not they're on a checklist, if that makes sense.
Well, it does, because when you know your value system and your purpose, then you have a rubric or a really clear filter for deciding what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to. So you aren't just shooting your energy out in every direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you progress.
Yeah.
Because you're like,
Does it
I'm
align?
heading north.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
is that north? Then I'm going there.
Yeah.
You know?
So
I love it.
To get to your question of like, what does it kind of consist
give
of?
us the
right?
overview. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it starts with the core values, and the core values are like your what, like what are the most important things in your life? And that's where a lot of people go to, like, oh yeah, it's like faith and family, and it's, or even certain kind of attributes like charity and kindness, compassion, whatever, all these good things, right? Whatever they may be. So that's the first thing. You figure out what is your
core values,
your what, your core values. Then we get into the guiding principles, which are a little bit more of an expansion on that. So if we talked about what's most important, the guiding principles are like the how, like how do you fulfill these things? How do you live them? And they're just these beautiful nuggets of wisdom and truth, right? And you guys are full of these. Like, you have so many good guiding principles that we've learned from you, that you've shared with us.
This was so fun when we did this as a family, because we're like, these nuggets are like, kind of like, what are the things that are said on repeat in your family?
Yes.
And I remember one of them was,
what could go right?
What could go right? Trial and error works every time was another one.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, we made a whole list.
Yeah.
We just had a blast.
Make stuff.
Because, you know, like our kids would be like, oh, dad always says this. Mom always says this. And then we were like, well, you always say this. And, you know, and we just had a great time realizing kind of like the threads that have woven the tapestry of our family culture.
Well, I love it because it's already in you. You're already living it, but to like gather it all in one place and put it into words, it's a treasure.
To codify it and articulate it, then we could say like, oh yeah, that is who we are. Like it's holding a mirror up back at us and just really refines.
And I love that you're talking about what coming before how.
Yeah.
Emily and I are big proponents of that. Because if we start with how, then we're limiting ourselves to what we know, what we're sure we're capable of, what we have experience with. But when we go to the what first, you're talking about values, but Emily and I often talk about like, what are the things that you seek?
What are your dreams, right?
Yeah. Like the vision.
And sometimes vision. The what is bigger than our current how.
Yeah.
And we have to grow our how or who we are to receive or be capable of or comfortable with bigger what's.
Yeah.
So keep going.
Love that. I'm so glad you added that. That's such a good insight to that process that I hadn't fully considered. So thank you. So after going through the guiding principles, which is the how, the purpose is the why. That is
what, how, why.
And why. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's your why. And there are a lot of brand experts out there and people that talk about this. Like Simon Sinek has like a famous thing about like get to your why. It's the golden circle or something. I forget what he calls it.
But most people ignore it. If you're listening to this, you might know like your company might do this where they ask you what's your why and you'll say it's your family, and then they'll give you incentives that take you away from your family. And they aren't actually they aren't actually aligned. Like they say like Simon Sinek said to figure out your why. So now that we know your why,
right.
And then it doesn't change anything. It's not like, oh, we're gonna anyway. I have lots of ideas. If anyone wants to hit me up with how you can align your reward system with your employee values.
Corporations need some consulting in this area. Emily's your girl.
I love it. So the why is the purpose statement. And it's literally answering the question, why am I here on this earth? Or why is our family here? Like, why? What is the intention? What is the purpose? And there's a lot of different ways to arrive at ideas to get this, to get this kind of locked in. And I've been kind of focusing on this more for individuals lately, just because that's more of the work I'm doing. This applies to individuals and families, right?
Yeah.
But I'll sometimes prompt people to think about, just without overthinking it, like, what are the things that bring you the greatest joy and fulfillment? Like, just list those out. What is it? Because often that's like your purpose is right in there, right? Just the things you're naturally drawn to do. Another one, which Erin talks about a lot. In fact, maybe you can talk about it, the way that our adversities.
This has been interesting because we've done this guide with enough individuals and families over the years that we've noticed a very interesting pattern is that so often challenge and trial is deeply connected to purpose. Like our pain is connected to our purpose. And so that's a good place to pay attention and get curious. Like, what have been my personal challenges and trials? Because I feel like, again, God wants us to serve from a place of authenticity, a place of experience. And so often those trials and challenges are our education or our preparation for the work we have to do on this earth. And
do you have an example you can give of that? Because that's a great concept, but I think for some of us, it might be hard to say.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Something that comes to mind?
Well, the Galloways come to mind. Or should I mention?
Yeah, go for it.
So as a family, maybe you have one for an individual, but we did this for a beautiful family back in California. They have a daughter who has special needs, and their purpose, I wish I had it word for word.
One part of it is to defend the defenseless.
And to just accept everyone, embrace everyone as they are.
That's right.
And I just feel like they just did that. That's how they lived. If you knew them, their arms were around you, and they were defenders, And so it was just beautiful to see how they lived that. And when they got clear on that purpose, I was like, oh my goodness, like it was just so genuine and so authentic, coming from their own family's experiences. That's just like one example. Do you have one from like an individual?
Well, yeah, one of my co-founders, partners, he only a few years ago, he went through a really dark time and got pretty close to the point where he was like thinking of just ending it all. Like got to that suicidal ideation place and got right up to the edge, and thankfully backed away from that edge. A text message came in at the right moment that sort of shook him out of that headspace he was in. And after doing lots of healing and work and therapy and repairing his relationship with his wife and his kids and everything, he is now such an advocate for suicide prevention and helping people when they're feeling utterly alone and depressed. Because he's like, I've been there and I know what that feels like. And now his mission is to like reach out to people that are in a similar spot and like help them. And he's like, and there's this genuine empathy and authenticity in being able to serve people that are in that situation, because he's lived it.
And people are drawn to him
in some version.
Yeah,
right?
People are drawn to him.
So that's like another example.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah. Okay, so we can often find our purpose in our pain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I could say that's the foundation of our story as well for what we're doing, because we were moving along, pursuing our goals and raising our family, and then, Eric produced a show off Broadway that failed, and he had given up his job to do that. And then it was just like, it was really hard. We always say he was the poster boy for failure, because it was literally on the cover of Crane's Business Weekly in New York City as like, here's what's wrong with the business model of off Broadway. And he just kind of went into hiding, and we had to go through this like digging and discovering time. And it was really hard for me too when we decided to live on a sailboat. That was facing a lot of fears that I had, a lot of getting out of our comfort zone. And we felt deeply that these things were for other people, but we were so attracted to the messages we would hear that like, we're capable of more, we're capable of more, we're capable of more, right? There was this like tension between how we felt and how we wanted to feel, right? We want to believe that's possible. And then actually doing it, and how hard it was. And it's transformative, because you go through a complete like spiritual overhaul of like who you think you are and can be. And when we realized that us broke, living in a tiny apartment with little kids and a child with special needs and everything, that we could pull off something like that, and then pull off something like that again and again and again, we were like, oh, everybody's other people. Like you can do this. You have more choices than you think. And so that kind of became our drama. Like, you have more choices, and everything we create is trying to help people figure out like whatever angle, whatever in to unlock that door from the inside to come out of the comfort zone and be like, oh, I can do those things. I can consider those options. I am capable of more than I thought. So I think that's our story also.
Absolutely. And like, can you imagine doing the work you're doing had you not gone through that? Like, what would you even have
wouldn't exist
to share?
Yeah,
right?
wouldn't
It's
exist.
like,
No,
so much creation comes from that, like deconstruction and that like, blah, you know what I mean? And it's just amazing. It's amazing.
Well, and we go through it multiple times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. And so,
It's
Well,
so true.
that's the
but you're less
interesting thing.
scared once you've done it deliberately
It's not
the first
quite
time.
as
you're
scary
like,
the next time. Yeah.
okay, we're going to do that again.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it starts with courage, and then you do it more, and it becomes confidence, right?
There you go.
Becomes
oh,
experience.
it
Yeah.
doesn't make it easy every time, but like,
There's some experience to back it up.
but I was gonna just mention the point that this idea of defining purpose, it's not you set it one time and that's it for eternity, right? Like our purpose can grow and evolve with us, and depending on different stages of life, and so it's something to consider revisiting every so often.
We revisited ours before
Yeah.
we moved. And I love thinking of it as like this like living, breathing document that can grow with you. I mean, as our kids grow, like maybe there's different things to focus on that can be more resonant or more meaningful in this new stage of life that we're in or whatever. But that's what I love. And like the work is just as meaningful in any stage that you visit it. Like our kids are now old enough that they can like be a real part of this instead of just us as parents kind of like being like, here it is.
Right, mom and dad
Yeah,
do it
exactly.
and present it to the kids.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's
Because
just
they're older.
Exactly.
And actually, just real quick for our listeners, how old are your kids now? Just age range.
We've got a range between 16 and 3.
Okay, 16 and 3.
5 kids,
Got
all
it.
about. It's all good. Yeah, all about 3 years apart.
Got it.
But yeah, no, that's like, it's a beautiful thing to do, as we've done it with like newlyweds, you know what I mean? And they're just like starting off with this. And it's also so amazing to do with families that have older children, because the kids can be a part of it. Like any stage that
Like
a
what you
family
guys got
wants to be
experience.
kind of like delving into this work, it will meet you where you're at, and it's meaningful no matter what. So
Okay, so we've got the what, the how,
the
the why,
and then the crest, which is just
the crest, which
the
is sort of
visual.
a graphic
Yep.
summary of those ideas. And I know ours has a sailboat and the mountains and some, you might remember, more precisely what's in there. But you were going to say something.
Turtle. Well, I wanted to go back because we've gone on this awesome journey in our conversation, and you talked about it can meet you where you are, which I love. And I kind of want to go back to that pivotal time when you realized this is our work. Our work is helping families, and we're going to use the skills we have, both your design work and your work with the body-mind connection. And how did you start? Because I know you had, like, even then you were telling me of this elaborate vision for how this could play out, like this whole campus, all
You were going to get a place to do events.
Yep.
And
so I want to back up to that. Like,
what were the baby
from
steps?
discovery, what were the first action steps?
We started really boldly just asking people like, hey, could we do this with your family? It's just an offering. It's free.
So brave.
It's just, you know what I mean? It is super brave. And like sometimes
we were lucky enough to be one of them.
Well, thank you for
right.
being so willing, because we learned so much from each of the families that we worked with. And so we did that. We would just like, I would literally just like pray about it, and families would come to mind, and I'd reach out and be like, hey, would you be willing to do this with us? And as we would do it, it would just become more clear, like the process of like how we could best guide a family through this. And the most efficient, clear way, we revisited our guide that we created so that the questions could be more
basic guide together initially, and then we kind of learned and adapted.
Yes, we would just make different iterations. And then as far as taking it to the next step, I remember standing in my living room and just getting this really clear prompting to hold a women's retreat. Never done anything like that before, but I could see it in my mind's eye. I was like, I knew who to ask. I knew where I wanted to have it. And I just started texting people like, hey, I want to have a women's retreat on this weekend. Would you be willing to come? And an amazing gathering of women came, and we did it at Camp Lehona Redwoods in Northern California. And it was just the most beautiful like literally surrounded by redwoods, and there was a river. We could go kayaking. And anyway, so we just started to like take that next bold step and just reaching out to people who felt safe, who we could practice and learn with. So I did that with women. We did that with families. We asked a couple of families, hey, we want to do a family retreat. Would you be willing to come? They did. And it was amazing.
And a family retreat, meaning the kids came too.
Everyone was involved.
Yeah.
Yep,
Wow,
the kids came too.
We had multiple families.
It was
that's a
so
lot of
awesome. And we had
like-
literally never done this before. We just were like, I think it's going to work. And we just made it work and learned from it. And then from there, just like a lot of practice over the years.
And then there was like a pandemic.
And then their
There's
pandemic
that,
happened.
Which kind
Little
of
blip.
shook things up.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, everything shut down the weekend of my women's retreat. I still remember that.
Of
And
one
just
of them.
Of
You
one
had
of
done
them.
others,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd done others, but I was very heartbroken about that.
I have a question for you in
Yeah.
this timeline, because at some point I remember you saying, we're gonna buy a place, like, and that we own to do this thing. Was that at this point, or is this further along?
No, we had no idea how that was going to work.
But we,
'Cause I remember you-
imagined it.
I remember you
could
saying
see
it,
it in our
but
mind's eye.
it was like there was no plan for it.
No,
Yeah, it
we
was
had
just-
no idea
There was
where
no
we could
means
just
available.
see it in our mind's eye.
You're just
No
like, we want
means.
to do this, but we have no idea how it's going to come
Exactly.
together.
It was just something that
Okay.
we could see in our mind's eye.
I just want to remember, like, I feel like you said that
We
long before
got
you had
that-
any idea how it was
we
going to
had
happen.
that vision like from the get-go, like that same awful weekend. That was all part of it.
The great and
The
terrible.
great and terrible weekend.
I know those. Yeah, we have a few
Yes.
of those in our
Well,
family lore.
And I would hear someone say like, oh yeah, Erin just invited me over for like a really delicious salad and we went to do some purpose work. And
Yeah.
you literally just had
I would
people
just
come
invite
into
people.
your
Wherever I was.
to your dining table, to your living room
Yep.
before you got a
Yeah.
space at this camp or whatever.
Exactly.
You just said, oh, now we know our purpose, so we better get to work. Hey, who wants to come over to my house and we're
we
gonna
just-
Do it in
and
your
we're
living
just
room.
gonna get
Yeah.
started
Like,
doing the work.
consistently from
I
the
love
get-go.
that you just started, and this will definitely say a lot about me. But I remember asking you earlier, like, "Well, do you have a website? Like, how can I share this with people?" You're like, "No," and I was like, "What?" Like, my mind is just
You need that
like
in
blowing.
place.
Like, how do you not have a website? You're not building an email list. Like, your husband obviously is a
Has the
pro at
skills,
all
yeah.
this stuff. Has the skills for it. You're like, no, we're just gonna work with people. We're just doing it, and then after it grew and I don't know how, when, and where you decided to like bring the website online and all the other things, but I just want to make it abundantly clear to anyone who's listening that there were zero obstacles between, or like there were probably obstacles, but there was nothing in between you deciding this is our purpose and then you actually just getting started. You didn't have to have a logo. You didn't have to have a company name. You
We
didn't
just
have to
got
have a
started.
special location. You didn't have to have coordinated chairs. You didn't have to.
brand color.
Like,
Like even
have-
as a branding guy, you weren't like, oh, let's get our brand
No.
nailed down first. You're like, we're
Right.
just going to go face in
Yeah.
and start doing the thing, and
Let's
we'll
start-
work on all that other
Everything else
stuff
will
later.
Yeah,
follow.
let's
It's
start
been-
helping people.
Yeah.
And I love it. I think it is so beautiful and so bold and so authentic.
Well, yeah, I
That's
mean,
awesome.
there's we just read it in the scriptures in First Nephi when he's asked to build this ship, something he's never done before. And it says repeatedly in the same verse, it was not built after the manner of men.
Mm-hmm.
And that just stands out. I'm like, this thing was not built in the typical way. And I can trust that. Like the Lord can
Yeah.
work with people who don't know what they're doing. He can work with people who've never done
Which
something
is all of
before.
us.
And it has grown organically. It has grown through word of mouth. It's grown through just like personal experience. We've just like
and
learned as we've
evolved.
gone, and it's evolved.
It's evolved and changed into different and new opportunities that we, some that we did not manifest, right? Or
Right,
foresee
right.
back on that.
Wait,
great
you didn't
terrible
have
weekend.
everything when you first started? It's revealed itself along the way?
Yeah, shocker, right?
Okay,
But
love
no, I mean it is crazy how many things did come to fruition though
Yeah.
from that initial kind of creative weekend that we spent together, including this idea which you were alluding to. This we were like, what if there was this property where we could go and have these beautiful experiences with individuals, with
strengthen
families,
just gathering places. Yeah.
and like, what was it? Probably 2 years later, there was the pandemic. We ended up moving back to Utah. I didn't get fired from my job, right? And that was actually such a tender mercy because we got to develop this stuff that we'd been doing without the pressure of like, we got to figure out how to make this work because we need to pay the bills. You know, it was like, we could do this on the side. I could continue focusing on work. And by the way, work got way better after that.
Around.
Like I got to do some of the coolest work of my career after that, like low point. Like things just, I ended up getting a totally different boss, and then another boss after that, and another one after that. And those last few, I just had like great relationships, really, really supportive and awesome, and like empowering, and just all the good things. And so all these beautiful things came in the wake of that low point.
Okay, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
That had never occurred to me until now, which is, do you feel like those shifts came because of things that were completely outside of your control? Or do you think you had this weekend where you were just like, oh my goodness, we're energized. We're like, I'm going to lose my job. The world is open to us. What do we want to do? And then did you show up as a different person? And do you think that was
a factor?
A factor? Yeah. So, I mean, and it might've been a blend, but I'm just curious. I never thought of you coming into your workplace with a new sort of persona, perhaps, or at least a new vibe,
energy. Yeah. No, there for sure was a shift for me internally where I wasn't so preoccupied with how work was going and my own self-doubts and whatever. Like that was majorly like reduced. Yeah. But I'm sure it was a combination of things. There was no moment where I went back and everyone was like, you're a new man. Like, here's a promotion. That would have been cool. But no, I think that like going back to work with a clear purpose, the way that I interacted with people, I felt like more opportunities came up for me to talk about things that really mattered to me that was based on my intention and purpose. And it wasn't related to like creating excellent, branding materials or whatever. It was sort of like we'd get into some personal topics, with colleagues, and I'd be like, this is an opportunity to talk about things that I really care about and that really matter. And so I was having great conversations like that. It wasn't directly tied to like my performance as far as the things I was measured on. And it took a while to get out of that muck. It wasn't like an instant change. There was sort of a little bit of that turbulence for it to,
you had to ride it out for a while still.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it just continued to get better, which is amazing. But that was all leading to the point of, it was probably 2 years after that, after the pandemic, we moved to Utah, and then suddenly we found ourselves just in this totally unexpected circumstance where we actually were able to get a property in Midway. And we were like, Erin was looking at a couple of different spots, and we went and looked at them. And there was one that was just this little corner property, pretty small, like more affordable, all the reasons to like consider it. And we went and checked it out. And then we went to this other one that had it was just this beautiful property. But like there's a humility about it. It was like simple.
It wasn't luxurious.
So
it's
special.
like an old
kind of a rusticness.
Yeah.
Rustic, like a
homey,
like a soul to it.
Yeah.
Yes. It had so much soul and character. A bit of a fixer upper, lots of issues, but we got there, and you go across this little bridge over a little pond with koi fish in it. I mean, are you kidding me?
Our jaws are dropping.
Right.
But and again, though, not like super fancy. It was just simple, but like so special. And you go across this little wooden bridge, and you get to the house, and the front door, it says on this wooden engraving on the front door, it says, "A place of safety and peace." And the doorknob is a beehive temple, like a Salt Lake City temple doorknob with the beehive engraved on it. And we were like, how did they get the temple doorknob on this house? Sure, it's a replica. But we were
religious
just like,
thieves.
Wow. Yeah, I know. So we were just like, this is cool. Like, this is special. And then we went in, and there was just more and more little artifacts. And the previous owner had like hand painted all these beautiful things in the house. And literally on the floor of the office, there's this seal that says, "The glory of God is intelligence." And you walk into the office, and we were just like blown away by all these things. And I look at a picture on the wall, and there's a guy I recognize, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Travis, who I knew from New York City, And it turns out it's his mom's house that's for sale. and property. And so I texted him and was just like, Travis, I just saw this incredible house and property. And I was like, man, it's so special. It's so cool. It's a bit out of our price range, but so awesome. I'm glad we got to check it out. And then he goes, well, for us, like it really matters who the buyer is, because there's so much nostalgia and meaning and whatever. And he's like, just maybe, think about what an offer might be.
Maybe put an offer
what
you can't afford.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll talk to my mom.
Exactly. And so we put in an offer that was significantly lower, not crazy, but like a decent, amount below the asking or the listed price.
Not something you would have dared to make as an offer if you hadn't got that nudge from Travis.
Exactly. And they came back and we met his mom too, and had Erin and she had a really special connection, connected right away, I should say. And we put in that offer and they countered like just a little bit, and they said, we know, like, the fact that you guys have this intention for this property and that you care about all the little quirks and like special hand painted touches and whatever, and that
none of that's going to get painted over or removed.
We didn't want to come in with a wrecking ball and like start over, because some people probably would have done that with that location and that space and everything. And so it worked out. Like, we ended up getting that place, and
wow, what a miracle.
It was amazing. Yeah.
I want to share this really briefly. Hilma and I had a moment in the front room.
That's the
That's
owners.
the previous owner.
The mother. Yeah.
She's so amazing. And she said that when she first got the place, it was shortly after a divorce. Felt like things had fallen apart. She felt very broken. And the house at that point was in really, really bad condition. She even said there were like holes in the walls. Like, it just needed a lot of work. And I'll never forget this. She said she was standing there in the front room just looking at this, feeling overwhelmed. And that she just felt the Spirit say, just watch what I can do with those who trust me. And then she just poured so much love. And she's like, I just wanted to create a place of healing for me and for my family. And she's like, I did anything I wanted to do, even if it was against the rules. And so she just like, just created and painted and just like did all the things that just made her happy. And I feel like people go to that space and they can feel her faith, her healing, like the intention that she created. It's like infused into the walls, into the floor. Like, people will come and they'll be like, I just feel like I'm home. Or it's a place where people can go to grieve. It's a place where people can go to rejoice. We've had families go like to celebrate the birth of a baby, or honeymoons, or reunions, or do you know what I mean?
One of our daughters.
It's just a special place. And I think that because of who she is and how she lived and what she poured into it, it has a very, very special feeling. And I feel that it's just amazing, the orchestration, that somehow it was available right when we were looking, and somehow we were able to like make this offer. And I'm just still amazed that actually
so orchestrated.
So orchestrated.
I love that. Watch what I can do with people who trust me.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
That stays with me.
Okay. First of all, I want you to tell us what you've named it. And then I want to jump ahead to, because you've invited us to teach in this space and we've spent some time there. So I want to jump ahead to that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So tell us the name of the place.
The name of the place is Bridgehaven.
Which I love.
Yeah.
So you go across the bridge, across the koi pond, into the house.
Into the haven.
It feels like crossing that bridge. It literally, you are crossing a threshold of some kind. And you leave the world behind.
It's a beautiful, visceral experience.
The physical experience of like walking into this space and the environment that's there is very conducive to the intention of that space. So,
and I think how you invited us to come there is indicative of how you've gone about all of this. You just said, would you be willing to, and we were living in California briefly during the pandemic, and you said, will you come teach, do a retreat at this new property that we own? And you just said, just tell us what you need, and we'll make it happen. You kind of,
what was the first time?
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, we'll just figure it out together. And we felt so safe to do that.
Yeah.
With you, because we hadn't done one of those before either, for couples anyway.
And so just to kind of describe what it was, actually, why don't you describe how it was from your side? Because we just road tripped out there, and we ended up spending the weekend, and you guys invited, as you do, you just sort of invited the people that you felt should be there. Why don't you talk through, because you'd done a couple of things there before we came, right?
Yeah, just like a few, like I think I only did women's retreats up until that point, right?
Yeah, that's probably.
And this was the first couples retreat.
Yeah, you were the first couples retreat that we did there.
So why don't you talk about, kind of like getting into that, and then what it felt like, just the space becoming the thing that you imagined.
Oh, it was, I don't know, are there words? Like just the realization of a dream, like something that you could see in your mind for so long, and just this eye of faith. And then suddenly here we all are in the same room together. And then I think about the connections, like the people that needed you and how that has shifted the trajectory of their lives. And I'm like, I just continue to be amazed. Like, again, like watch what I can do with those who trust me. And all of us are just stepping into that in our own ways.
I just want to say 2 other couples that have been on this podcast were at that retreat.
Exactly.
Dan and Natalie Reeves and Shandi and Drayson Kilpack.
Yep.
That's right.
And so, it's kind of, it's rippling out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe I'm not asking the question in a very articulate way, but just like, what does it become, or how, you bought this house. So
where are we now?
Is kind of like
from the pivotal.
You bought it from Hilma, and it was this. It needed work, and then Mike put his awesome design touch on it, and you both kind of like redecorated the place, and it's a beautiful home.
Yeah.
And and now you use it for lots of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just kind of like talk about that, because you're using it for men's retreats, which I've also been to.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, fill us in a little
How
bit
it
there and paint the
evolved
picture about what it is now and how it runs.
Well, it was cool how there was this initial intention of, again, the what, but we didn't have the how. And then it was like, okay, how, we'd love to have a place. And then that all unfolded. And now it's like, okay, we have this destination, this place to be able to do these things. And it started with Erin, like doing women's retreats there and just coming back and being like, it was so incredible. It was so amazing,
I just have to say also, for my part, when you're like, oh yeah, we now have the place, I was like, oh my goodness, how did they do it?
It's happening.
Like they said, but none of us were like, how is it going to work out? None of us knew.
Yeah.
And then you're like, we've got it. I was like,
what? Yeah. I mean, I told you one part of that story, right? Of how we were able to like put in an offer that we were able to make it work. There's like so much more to it than that, that could take
so many
a lot
miracles.
Of time.
Miracle upon miracle.
It was just like this path was just unfolding, one step at a time, and some very significant steps, at a time. That story being one of them that I shared earlier. But it was sort of this, and it was also for our family, right? So this idea of strengthening families, including
that's like ours. Yeah.
That's core to our purpose statement, which our family purpose statement is to seek to know the living God, to strengthen the family and help build Zion. And so our own family inclusive, right? And so we would go to that place just with our kids and spend a weekend there, and they'd run around in the property, and or play in the snow in the winter, whatever it is, right? So there's those kinds of gatherings that we would have. That's maybe a more typical, like somebody has a little getaway like place or a cabin or whatever, right? So there's that purpose. But then we had the individuals and families that we wanted to do this work with. And when we were thinking of how could we get couples or families to be more a part of what we're doing there, that's where we were, we had our own crest and purpose work that we had been doing. And we were like, oh, what would a whole experience around that look like? And then I can't remember at what point we like thought of you guys or how that happened, but we were like, oh, it'd be so awesome for the Ortons to come and just speak to some families that we know, some couples. I
literally want everyone I know to know you guys. I'm just like, I want everyone to meet you.
Yeah.
And to be touched by you. I'm serious. And so,
you have an inspiring story, and we just imagined like
I knew it would be good.
Like
I know this is going to be amazing. And so we just started inviting, and then like with the women's retreats and the men's retreats, like we just started inviting, and they started happening. I mean, do you want to share?
There was an evolution to it.
Yeah.
And so we imagined doing just like seminars where it was honestly stuff that we wanted to experience ourselves. We're like, wouldn't it be cool if we could just have the Ortons come and like tell their story, and then we want to have like the Covingtons do something, just all the amazing people in our lives. We're like, let's just get together there. And I mean, we could just all hang out somewhere, but wouldn't it be cool if we gave them a place to
purposeful, intentionally gather
and like teach us and share things and talk about it and ask questions and really like get into the good stuff, you know?
And I feel like we've been so blessed through the different moves and the different people that we've met through the years.
Mm-hmm.
We know amazing people. We have amazing friends in our lives, and we love creating spaces where they can share their expertise, they can share their stories, they can shine, you know what I mean? And so, I don't know, it's just been an incredible thing to connect worlds, I guess, and to be like, you got to hear their story, or you got to like, we had Joseph Bricky come share about temple symbolism and sacred geometry. And like, that was remarkable, you know, and just like, there's so many people out there who I feel like everyone has something amazing to share. And so to have a space where that can happen, and it just almost feels very natural at this point. It doesn't feel so scary. It doesn't feel so hard. People want to gather purposefully. I feel like that's something that is really, I don't know, needed.
Yeah.
Needed. So
it might have been one of the cameras turning off. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well,
okay. Actually, before we move off of this, I want to say, I think that's a really important point that it's a lot less hard now.
Right.
That you've learned a lot. You've done a lot of things that felt impossible. Is it safe to say that you just kind of like, you had an idea, but you had no idea how?
Never imagined we'd be doing this.
And it's come to fruition. And you're saying, oh yeah, now like, because you've invited us to a lot of things and we've been able to come to a couple, but not most of them. But the fact that you're just like, oh yeah, now we're going to do another one of those things that we've done so many of. And there's an ease to it and a comfort to it. And Emily and I, sometimes when we haven't talked about this in a while, but when we do corporate speaking gigs, it's like we talk about 3 kinds of confidence. There's competence. Confidence comes from gaining a new skill, competence. From credibility, of doing what you say you'll do. When we do what we say we'll do, we become more confident, and we become more calm, because we realize that whatever is going to come up, we're going to figure it out, because you have a track record with yourself. And I feel like you guys have established a track record for yourself, and you have the skills of, you know, you beta tested this with lots of willing individuals and families, and you've done what you've said you would do. And so just hearing you say those things, I feel the confidence that you have in what you're doing now. I mean, I felt it before, like confidence of, we want to go in this direction. Now it's the confidence of, look at what has happened. And you can not like, look at what we've done, like what we've done, but just saying that we can point to all this evidence.
There's experience
and it's gone from theoretical to actual. And that shows up in how you think about it and feel about it and talk about it, at least from my perspective.
And I can just say from experience, it feels amazing to live your purpose. It feels amazing to live your purpose. That doesn't mean that it's easy. Oh my goodness. It's really hard sometimes.
Well, you guys' lives have not been perfect.
Well, I think, we would love. The waves have gotten bigger. The waves have gotten bigger, but
I love
it's
that way of putting
so fulfilling, and there's so much joy.
And there is opposition, you know, when you are seeking to do a good work, there is like, there are opposing forces. And sometimes it's the kind of thing where maybe it is signals of like, maybe we're not on the right track and we need to, you know, pivot, and that's a lot of, you know, introspection and prayer. Sometimes though, it's literally just the resistance before doing a good thing or doing something that might be life-changing.
Can I share? I mean, I'm not saying that these were going to be life-changing, but like there was a pattern for a while there that I was just like, oh, great. Every time I would do a women's retreat, some big disaster would happen at Bridgehaven. Like our fireplace literally like fell out of the wall because of all the snow. Like the weight of the snow just pulled the fireplace
chimney.
Out of
the chimney.
The whole
the chimney and the fireplace
was
just
separating from
out.
the house.
And so
I thought you just wanted a new fireplace.
No, it dropped out 3 days before my women's retreat.
Oh my word.
And what's amazing is God provided, and I was still able to hold the women's retreat.
We got it boarded
we
up
just got it boarded up, patched up, and we still did it.
Like a new chimney came in?
No,
there was literally a hole in the living room.
That was raccoons could have like gone in and out. It was crazy.
And this was winter. I mean, it was
And then
insane.
just a few months later, again, days before my next women's retreat, the pond flooded everywhere just because of all the runoff and all the snow.
Wow.
So there's just like lots of things that come up, and it's so often right before an event or a retreat or a gathering. But what's cool, I had a moment where patterns are interesting. The Lord works through patterns. And I remember this moment where he taught me, like, reframe this. Every time something happens, it seems like a disaster. I want you to reframe it because you're about to see a miracle. Mm-hmm. You're going to see a miracle. I will follow through. I will pull you through this one. And he has every time. He's never let us down. And so I feel less and less concerned and less of a feeling of dread. Like I would almost feel like this like heaviness before a big event because I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm like, it's going to be okay. He absolutely will follow through and I have nothing to worry about. It's going to work out every time. So it's been confidence building, but not easy. Not easy.
Yeah.
So
what have been, I appreciate you talking about some of the obstacles, and I'm sure there are, spiritual obstacles that come up as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So many.
As you turn the soil and you reinvent yourself to become capable and comfortable with these new things, then obviously you're always going to discover some new things. So I'm curious, that was a great insight about just like that growing confidence and trust that lots of obstacles will continue happening and then and the Lord will be there for you. Mm-hmm. What are some of the other, I guess the insights, the takeaways, these kind of like, I don't know what the right word to use, but like these things that you then treasure in your heart and say, oh, here's a truth that I get to move forward with now that you have taken from this journey?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. It's one I need to reflect on for a moment.
Well, while you're thinking, I'm going to, here's where I'd love to go after you answer that question. I'd love to talk a little bit about the light within us. Mm-hmm. I'd love to talk a little bit about here. And then I think, then we'll start to wrap up. But I want to I don't want to not talk about those two things.
Yeah, where are we now?
Because those are sort of outgrowths. Is it safe to say that those are outgrowths of Bridgehaven?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So, and if you want to talk about those and then come back to Emily's question, if you need more time.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be every single thing that you've learned or like the most, but what comes to mind first about like the shaping influence that this has been on you?
Yeah. Well, I think you shared one already, which is I don't have to worry. Like, you kind of the dread before an event, like it's going to be okay. Even if the chimney separates from the house or there's flooding, because you have this new trust and confidence. Yeah. To me, that seems like one.
No, that's been life-changing. That would be an example. That has been life-changing. I want to say this like in the most like articulate, honest way possible, but just this realization from experience, not just from like belief or theory, that God is capable of doing his work and that amazingly he invites us to collaborate with him. Like, what? The God of the universe wants to work with me. He wants to work through my hands and my words. And I often just feel so inadequate and so like I've got nothing to offer, but like I know that he can work through the weak, through the simple, through the broken. And that as we come together just with that, like if we're just willing to show up, he's got miracles prepared. And that every single person has something so important to share. And when we come together, I feel like we can like reflect that to each other. Do you know what I mean? The women's retreats that I hold, everyone who comes also is invited to share. And that's just been such a beautiful thing. It's not just like me sharing all the sessions. It's like they come and everyone has something to offer.
I was going to say that was your format from the beginning. When you first said, hey, I want to do a women's retreat, and you invited those ladies, you said, and I need you to take 20 minutes and you to take 20 minutes or however much time you gave them.
Exactly.
But everyone was contributing. It wasn't just, I'm not like, I'm going to just feed you and you're going to listen to me talk.
Exactly. No, and it's like the Lord actually gave me that idea for the very first one that I did back in 2019. And I feel like the hearts of the women who come are in a different space when they're also sharing. I feel like there's like a oneness or an openness, a vulnerability, a willingness to like, it's not just like a passive experience. It's
you're a better listener when you know you're going to be presenting.
Yeah. And like, we just all have so much to share.
Emotional, spiritual, intellectual potluck.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And it all blends together to make a beautiful meal.
And there has been like, this is something that I've learned. There's so much that I can't control. at this point, the people who are coming to my retreat, I don't know them. I don't know their backgrounds. I don't know their stories. And there's a massive amount of trust that I need to have, that the Lord has slowly built with me, to like hold a space where I'm like, I don't know what's going to come out of people's mouths. I don't know if everyone's going to get along or if it's going to be compatible. But it's been amazing to see that every single time it's exactly right. It's exactly right. And I have just learned to just trust him. Just trust him. This is his work, and he's working through each and every one of us. And so that feels really light. This work doesn't feel so heavy. It feels very light.
When it's not on your shoulders.
No, it's not on my shoulders.
That's excellent.
That's awesome. I mean, the things that came to my mind were more around the audience that I'm currently serving most, which is men. And there's a lot of insights that have come from working with guys, which there's just a lot of like stigma and stereotype around when men get together and hang out. You know, it goes about this deep, whatever, this deep,
like an inch deep.
We're just going to talk about sports and whatever.
And I know, having been with you, I know that that's not how it is.
No.
You go a mile deep.
We try. I mean, it's not even that I try. It's like, if you give men the opportunity, to open up where it feels safe, where they can be vulnerable, where they can recognize that it's like a safe place to talk about how they're really feeling, how they're really doing. That's one of the stigmas, right? Is like, oh, guys don't want to talk about that stuff. I think that's false.
I love to talk about that stuff. Yeah. I'm just hungry for a place and people to talk about.
It's like you have to create the environment and the space for it where it's welcome and where it's safe and where it's encouraged even. And then it can go so deep and have these amazing conversations and connections with people. And that to me was just one of those insights, which is like, there's sort of this, stigma, I'll just use that word again, around the male mind.
Just men in general.
Yeah,
like, I mean, and it's been going on for decades.
Yeah, absolutely. So to be able to like witness how that can actually unfold in a space like that, it's been a really powerful, amazing thing. And then how much people, sometimes they don't even realize it. I've heard this feedback so many times. Someone will come to a retreat, maybe because their friend invited them or they were just curious or whatever, and they'll leave going, I had no idea how much I needed that. You know, like it's like, it's that thing I didn't even know I was missing, that I was craving, like deep down, maybe under some layers of suppression or whatever it is, right? Yeah. Or distraction. I mean, I experienced that when I was just really busy at work. It's like, you're so distracted, you don't really take the time to go inward and to really check in with how's my heart and soul doing, right? You just are kind of like go, go, go. And so you give people some space to explore that and to reconnect with that and get in touch with that eternal part of themselves. And they are just so nourished by it and so blessed by it that they're like, I need to do this like all the time.
The regular. Yeah.
On the regular. Yeah. And so those are the kinds of things that came to my mind from your original, very poignant question. And I'm sure that I have some personal takeaways too that I could get to, but that's where my head went.
I think my follow-up question for both of you would be, coming from a marriage partnership that is also trying to do some good in the world together in this more codified way, like what have been some benefits to your relationship through doing this work, supporting each other in this work, whether you're doing it together or branching out with the same purpose?
Yeah.
Our relationship has gotten a lot more honest and open in communication because
it's what we're practicing.
It's it's been really good. It's been stretching. It's been really stretching, but like in a healing way. I feel like it's just very safe to be real with each other. Whereas maybe in the past, not that it wasn't safe, but we just didn't have the same kinds of conversations. I feel like, and we get it. Like when he comes home and tells me about his retreat, I'm like, oh, I get it. And like when I share with him or share the challenges or the joys, like we get it because we are doing this like arm in arm, you know what I mean? And it's just beautiful to be able to share it at that level.
Absolutely. So we had a retreat with the Here Brotherhood down at Zion National, or near Zion National Park, at like a glamping site nearby. And we have an app. And after the retreat, I mean, it was this incredible experience. There were like 33 of us there, and someone on the text on the app was like, "How do you guys talk to your spouse or partner about what just happened?" He's like, "I don't even know how to talk about this with my partner," you know? And people were literally sharing suggestions of like, "Oh, I just read through my journal and, you know, da, da, da." And I just thought about that. I was like, yeah, that would be hard if I experienced something like that and then tried to come back and talk to Erin, who maybe she wasn't.
I was with the kids all weekend while you were off.
Yeah.
You know, like we had totally different weekends, but
yeah.
So how to communicate that?
So there's been a more a deeper capacity to really like understand and empathize and feel. Like so many times I'll explain something to Erin and I'm like getting teary eyed just talking about it because it was this beautiful moment and she's right there.
I'm like crumple face crying.
I'm
like,
oh, and she's like, I feel like I was there,
yeah.
You know? It's so that's been really cool to be able to not just, I mean, have those experiences together in some instances, but then when we do them separately, we get to like share in the stories and the outcomes and
your
power
feedback, like insights and feedback that we can bounce off each other.
Yeah.
Like it's been really helpful to just keep refining this work. So
well, I want to paint a picture a little bit for our listeners about Here and the light within us. Kind of like as somebody who is, you know, you're in it, but I'll say Here Brotherhood is sort of a men's focused, nurturing men, both in open conversations. I know that we did breath work when we were together. And I'm assuming that when you were down in Zion, there was sort of some outside exertion, adventure elements to it. And so that's the Here Brotherhood. And I know you're strong on LinkedIn and you've got your app and a website. And then you've got the light within us, which is closer to home.
Yeah.
We're the partners of that.
And the two of you are doing that together. And I know that it's a lot more yoga nights and some other kinds of, and I don't even know all the kinds of activities.
Maybe you should tell us.
So maybe
what
you
it
should
is.
tell us.
It's totally
because
fine.
But all nourishing. Yeah.
And it's always got good food.
I do love to cook. I feel like the light in us was just created around the idea of making safe spaces together. So through yoga classes, through breath work, meditation, whatever it is, events, we love to do events, again, either up in Midway or we're doing one in February that's like, I've got a friend who is going to be doing a dance workshop. And you know what I mean? That there's just, again, it's sort of like tapping into the amazing people that we know and giving them a space to share their beautiful gifts so that we can all be edified. So that's the light in us.
Yeah, and it kind of originated. I think we finally like made the website. Speaking of,
like a few years in, you're like, well, now that we've got the property and we've got the program, we're going to actually give it a name and give it a website, and then we're going to do some branding.
Yep, exactly.
All backwards, but all beautiful.
Like we got the property first, and then we made the site, and then we worked on in Highland. We have a space dedicated for like yoga or breathwork sessions. Space. Yeah, like a little studio space. So, and that's one of the reasons we came up with like another name, because otherwise we would have just probably gone with Bridgehaven. But we're like, well, no, we're doing work in different locations.
So you have two physical locations.
together.
And you do some similarities in these kinds of events, but they're two spaces.
Yeah.
One that's more remote, one that's a little bit more accessible.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the one's right at our house, right? So we're just doing events on like a Thursday night, tuck the kids in, and then run out there and we'll do a yoga class, or I'll do a breathwork session or whatever. So so that's when we created that. And then the Here Brotherhood thing came quite a while after that. So I had started doing men's retreats like 2 years ago, roughly. And I had been doing those for many months. I think I had done 9 or 10 retreats by the time one of the guys that came to one of my retreats met these other two guys through LinkedIn who were starting this brotherhood thing. And so he just connected us because he was like, you guys are really on the same wavelength here of what you're trying to do. And so I met those guys, John and Justin, and they, through a whole process, they invited me to be a co-founder with them. And I had this moment of, like I was in a pretty good groove at that point, and I was like, this will shake things up, you know, like this is taking on a big thing. And but at the same time, I felt just called to it, you know. I was like, I'm kind of already doing this. This is just a way to amplify through collaboration and partnering up with some people that have their whole networks and their reach, and they were doing amazing things on LinkedIn. Like that one guy's story I mentioned earlier, he was sharing that story on LinkedIn, which was super vulnerable and really raw, and just the responses that he was getting of people saying like, thank you, and or like, I'm in that boat, and you know, like just reaching out for help, and he was there for them. There were just beautiful things happening. And I was like, yeah, let's jump in on this and combine forces, essentially. And so that has grown and evolved and become a whole other animal, you know, and it's been incredible. I feel like I was talking about this with somebody, it might've been Layla, our friend Layla McCary. Or
shout out to New York.
Yeah, there it is.
And California. She's
and
in
California.
both
That's
places.
right. I think it was in a conversation with her, but I was explaining how I was debating whether I wanted to sign up to be like a co-founder of a thing, because I was like, I was in a good group, like a good rhythm with what I was doing. And I just decided to like stretch and grow and jump into it. And she was like, oh, that's interesting. So you chose to grow instead of maybe being forced to grow in some other way. And I was like, whoa, I did not think of it like that. You know, it's almost that like, do you choose to be humble, or are you compelled to be humble?
Yeah.
Do you choose to grow, or are you compelled to grow? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to run with that.
Yeah,
I'm choosing
way
this.
better.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to grow, because it's been challenging, but it's been amazing too.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So as we kind of come on the home stretch of our conversation, I don't know if you've got other questions you want to ask, but I just want you to be thinking about, first of all, there are people listening to this that are going to have something that they're trying to create in their lives. They're trying to find their purpose. They're trying to be intentional and step into something that they don't know how it's going to happen. I want you to, anything that you can say that might be helpful to them on their journey. And then then people might also genuinely want to just know about like, hey, I want to go on one of these men's retreats, or I want to be a part of Light Within Us, you know, where they can learn more to get the benefit of the things that you guys are doing and offering. So something that might be helpful on their journey, and then something if they wanted to join in what you're doing, how they can learn more about that. Cool.
you want to go?
The first thought that comes to me as far as just a helpful, very accessible tool is to write. Write. And
You're speaking our language.
Yeah. No, I just feel like that was such a huge part of our experience of this creation process. Writing is interesting because it involves like effort and agency on our part. I think the Lord has so much to give, but I also think that there needs to be like a willingness to receive. And I feel like the more we're willing to write, the more he's willing to like share. Do you know what I'm saying? And so if someone out there is, you know, wanting to get clear, I think it was Sir Francis Bacon who said, writing makes an exact man. And I just think that like our words, like bringing whatever's out there into like words, into something like that it's in this physical world, then that can just continue to like bring the dreams into the physical experience, this physical realm. And there's something to it. It's just magical. It's just a magical thing. And it's something that anyone could do at any point.
Yeah.
I love it.
Maybe one step to add to that, because that's where my head went too, was like take some time to like write out what this dream is, like what, and you can start, I mean, when writing, you can kind of go big in the writing process, but then when
it's
it
really
comes
cheap to write.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost.
Exactly. But then in the execution, it's like, okay, the how, right? How am I going to pull this off? I'm going to like take a page from your guys's book and say like, there's just things you can do to start small. And in your navigator's framework, you have this laid out beautifully. So that's already there for people to access. But that idea of like, you don't have to go all the way to the big dream right away, but to just take little steps. And even so, my first men's retreat, I had like a vague idea of what I think it could look like. and I was just stewing over it, like, because Erin would come back from these women's retreats and just be on cloud 9. And I'm like, well, what would like a men's thing look like, you know? And Erin was like, well, let me just introduce you to someone who I know who does men's retreats. Like, let's just start there. Nice. And I was like, that's great. You know, and maybe that's the find a mentor, you know, principle that you guys share too. And so I met her friend, Brian, and he was so funny. He loved that I was feeling called to the work, and I love that about him. He was just amazing. Very like open and collaborative. It wasn't sort of a, oh, you want to do this too? Well, now we're competitors, right?
No, yeah. He's like so abundance mindset. Yeah, he's amazing.
It was awesome the way he was approaching it. But he said, I've got a retreat this Friday. This was on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. He's like, you got to come to my retreat on Friday. And it's so funny because I was like, well, I don't know if I want to go to a retreat. You know?
Like, I'll host them, but I'm not going to go. I was like, as a guest, you mean?
I don't know people there. I don't, you know, all the
fears that everybody that comes to your retreats has.
Exactly.
Yes. And I'm like, dude, I can so empathize with anybody that I've invited that's like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, I get it. you know, like I know that feeling.
Hilarious.
But I went to one. And then it was modeled to me like, oh, here's a way you could structure it. Here's all these things that he did so expertly. It was awesome. And it introduced me to some things that I was like, I got so much from that. And I'd love to figure out what's my version of that. Like, how do I integrate something like that? And then of course I had my other material and the stuff that I was doing. So I got to just kind of like Frankenstein these things together, and then all the stuff that Erin does and has done and that we've experienced together. And so I started to put together, like, I think this is what a little agenda would look like. And then my first step from there was to take some friends to lunch and tell them about this amazing experience I had, and then tell them about me feeling called to do something and just saying, would you guys be willing to try this with me? Like, are you down to come stay overnight at this place in Midway and be like my first group, and we'll just like, I think it's going to be cool.
We're going to bro down.
Yeah. And I was like, and they were down. They were like, yeah, let's do it. And so, and they actually kind of helped me co-create it. Over lunch, I was talking about how to structure it, and they had some suggestions, and I was like, oh, that's a great idea, you know? And I kind of tailored it and adjusted it based on feedback. And then we went and did it, and it was incredible. Like it went so well, like beyond my expectations. People had super powerful, meaningful spiritual experiences, really bonding. I mean, it was just this amazing thing. And then all of a sudden, like, yeah, I mean, you just are on cloud 9 and you take off from that kind of experience. You know, talk about confidence building. I mean, it was so scary going into that, and they all show up, and I've got my agenda, and it's like, okay, here we go. Like, I hope this works.
You're like, I don't know if I'm worried nobody will show up, or if I'm worried everybody will show up.
Yeah, totally.
And I think I came to your second one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And it was very smooth and very, like, I felt reassured. Like, Mike's got this organized, and we're just going to go with it. And I felt safe and taken care of in the way, like, I could be at ease. That's probably a better way to describe it. Nice. So I just felt at ease because I felt like Mike knows what he's doing.
and like my palms are sweating. Like, hope nobody figures me out. Yeah. No, and now it's like, I used to have to refer to all the materials a lot, like, oh, what comes next? And, you know, I want to like say this just right. And now it's at the point where it's kind of just there, and it goes a lot more smoothly now. Yeah.
I love that. Guys, thanks for sharing those. And this has been such a fun conversation. We've been friends for how long? I don't even know how many years.
We don't even have to count. Like,
forever. Raised our kids in New York together. Yeah. And anyway, and so long time. And it's just a delight to sit down with you and to hear a longer version of things that we've known a lot about, but not everything that you shared tonight. So that's been really great for us. And before we wrap up, you know, I want you to tell people where they can learn more about what you're doing. Did you have any closing questions that you wanted to ask, Emily?
I don't have any more questions for you guys. You're off the hook for now. No, I really appreciate you being so open, and just, this is the real you. This is the real stuff. These are the kind of conversations we have when there's no microphones and cameras around. And I appreciate you so much. This is showing up honestly and I think setting a great example for what it looks like and sounds like to be someone who has pursued and discovered and gotten in the path of doing the work of your purpose, right? And one of the things, besides just how much we love to be around you and how inspiring you are and full of light and always looking for the good and being humble and seeing the best in others, I was really happy to have you come on because we talk a lot about outdoor adventure. And it can be incredible. It's such an efficient way to make a connection, right? Or to be out of your comfort zone or learn something. But that isn't what is on everybody's heart, right? That isn't what everybody feels called to or drawn to. And so we were just really excited to be able to interview you, that you were willing to share your story so that people can listen and say, oh, wait a minute. When Eric and Emily are talking about your dream or your goal or your vision, whatever it is, it can be so many different things. Yeah. But we get to a point in life where, like you said, you're like, oh, I realized I was distracted, that I was just kind of like humming along in a familiar rhythm, but I wasn't thinking too much about where I was going or why, and once you had, that's like the law of physics, right? You're just going to be an object in motion, just going to continue in motion until something else, whacks me up the side of the head. And then you're like, wait a minute, where am I going? What am I doing? And I think
performance review
that can happen at any time in our life. And I love that it was literally a performance review, because we can do that for ourselves. We can say, I want to just right now give myself a performance review. Like, how do I feel like my life is going? And am I feeling like the satisfaction of fulfilling a purpose? Do I have a sense of purpose and direction? And so I'm just so happy for everyone who's going to be able to have a chance to listen to this, to realize, oh, I don't have to want to live on a sailboat or climb a mountain or write a book to be able to benefit from some introspection and some writing, maybe some prayer, and just giving myself some space to figure out, what am I meant for? And then realizing that it's worth the challenging work to get in alignment with that over and over again. Like there's a refocus element, right? So thank you so much for just making that abundantly apparent, that we're each here with a special call, and that this is what it looks like to heed the call.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been quite an adventure, in spite of maybe lack of like flying across the world, right? It's been its own kind of adventure, and the rewards have been incredible. Like, go ahead.
I just want to share, like, I feel like the real work is always about what happens in the heart. The external can definitely support that, but it doesn't have to look a certain way externally. And anyone who's listening, I just can say, even if I haven't seen them or met them personally, like, I know for a fact that you have a purpose, and that it's already inside of you, and that it's just waiting to be discovered.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Okay.
What could go right? Okay.
The light in us.
Yeah. Tell us where they can find you, websites or social media or whatever.
So it's thelightinus.org or thelightwithinus.org. Both will take you to the same place. Because so many times people are like, oh, it's the light within us. The light within us.
I probably said it both ways.
The light in us. Yeah. Both are correct. Either one. You'll get
light in and lightwithinus.org.
.org. And that's where you'll see events.
Classes, events.
Midway and in Highland, and there's classes, there's yoga, there's breathwork classes, there's kind of special workshop and weekend events. A lot of those are like couples or some family based. And then
can I just say real quick that you host these in Utah, but you have people coming from not just Utah, like coming from different places around the country. Like, we came in. We came from California. But you don't have, anyone that's listening, you don't have to live in Utah to come to these events.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just hop a flight to Salt Lake City and you can get there.
Road trip.
Come be with us.
And then the Here Brotherhood, which I have, 3 other co-founders of that now. We're a team of 4 co-founders. We are most easily found probably through our website, which is Here, Heare.
It's like He-are.
Yeah,
but
here.
here.
Exactly. So it's actually the combination of the spellings of both here. So I hear you, HEAR, right? I'm listening, and I'm here. I'm present. Like I'm before you, and I'm listening to you, and I'm here for you. Cool. So it's both
HEARE.
Exactly.
Dot.
Oh, so it's herebros.com.
Herebros.com.
Yeah. Or find our app. And that's actually probably the better place to find us. So it's just the Here Brotherhood. It's on the Apple Store. It's on Google Play. And that's like the social platform. The social media has a lot of baggage. We were like, no, we're not social media. We're social support. That's what we're going to call this, because it's a totally different intention and different outcome than social media. So that's our social support platform. And we do all kinds of cool events. A lot are virtual, like live stream events. So we'll do meditation sessions. We'll have speakers come on, and sometimes it's like a life coach or a therapist, or all kinds of different speakers will come on and share things. And we do retreats that are kind of bigger scale at different locations. And our next one is down in Arizona, April 11th to 14th. And we've got capacity to have a pretty good sized group down there. So this should be exciting.
Love it.
That's awesome.
And I just want to go back to this thing. I think I want to end here, Erin, what you're saying, like for anyone listening, this idea that you have a purpose.
Yes.
And what was the rest of it? You say you have a purpose. It's
already inside of you. It's just waiting to be discovered.
What could go right? Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Eric. If you want to go sailing with us this year, here's how that works. First of all, we just got back from the Bahamas last week, had a blast. We have a few more trips planned for this year. There's two ways that you can come sailing with us. One is you can book by the cabin, and two, you can just get a group of 6 to 10 people together. Let me know. We'll check our calendars, find a time that works, pick a place that you're excited about that I want to go to, and we'll make it happen. So reach out and let me know if you want to get a group together. If you want to book by the cabin, here's what you do. Go to theawesomefactory.nyc/sailing 2024, and you can get the rundown on what's happening, how it all works. And at the bottom, you can schedule a time to chat with me. I'll answer all your other questions and see if we can find a trip that's a match for you. So if you want to get out on the water, go sailing somewhere fun this year, would love to join you there. Thanks so much.